So all of those are self-orientation. And if anybody looks at the algebra of the equation that we talked about, there's the three things on the top that multiply together. And if any of them is small, then for those of you who remember your algebra training, the whole product is, you multiply things together, it's called a product. The whole product becomes small.
What immediately came to me was when you think about the credibility, reliability, vulnerability, and self-orientation, if we start by looking at because knowing that the self-orientation can have such a positive or negative impact on the overall equation or the product of the equation, maybe that's where we all should start at some point, is identifying how am I showing up? And if it's not a challenge for you, then okay, then you move into something else. Where is it that self-orientation is coming in, and am I doing it in a way that's balanced for other people? And if you're unsure, ask someone you trust and say, how do I show up in conversation in our relationship? Do I show up as more intentional for other people or more intentional for myself? I think that's one way. And then the other way is to look at the self-orientation as a starting point and then begin to look at, where am I credible in my credibility score? Where am I in my reliability and vulnerability score? And based off what we've talked about today, identify which of those areas within each of the three categories that you can see the most improvement. So that would be how I would suggest, Phil, that from my perspective, people begin to reflect on the episode we've talked about today. But how would you like to summarize and or suggest reflection for our BrainWise friends?
So take all of those, the credibility, reliability, and vulnerability, and give yourself a score on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you? And multiply them together, and then self-orientation, give yourself a score, and then divide one by the other, and you've got your index. Then what I would say is, what do I have to do? What one thing could I do that would actually make that index increase?
Hopefully our BrainWise friends have picked up some nuggets. I know I've learned some nuggets along the journey. And I think what we'll talk about in our next episode is just a continuation, is when trust is broken, how do we rebuild it? Thank you for tuning in to our episode of My BrainWise Coach on what is trust, or the neuroscience of trust. And stay tuned as we continue the conversation next week on how to rebuild trust when it's broken. And as always, if you enjoyed today's episode, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this episode with your friends and colleagues and relationships so that they too can begin to learn how to decode their life from a BrainWise perspective. And as always, stay compassionate, stay curious, and stay BrainWise. We'll talk to you next week.